Am I really going to do this? Of course I am! What have I done? You know what? No, this is fine. This is fine. We're gonna make this work.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think of the Traveler? He is the quintessential starting character, and maybe the most flexible the game has to offer. But with the Fontaine update, we find ourselves with a Traveler that many find to be rather lackluster. Hearing that though, you know I had to build him, right? Now, I know that out of the box, he feels like the equivalent of being a small kid and playing with a friend and pretending to shoot each other, and it goes something like this.
I shot you. No, I got you.
I have a shield.
No,
I can't hurt me. I'm invincible.
I shot you.
I can't be hurt by bullets. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about his skills, passives, and equipment, and really break down why people find him so weak in the first place, as well as try my best to find a reasonably good use for him. First, we have his normal and charged attack. For the purposes of his kit, these don't really do anything. They have low ratios and really are just there for the sake of being a normal attack, so we'll just ignore these for now. Next up, we have his skill, which is really the bread and butter of his kit. There's a lot to pay attention to here. You can tap the skill and fire off a line of hydro damage in front of you. This damage is honestly kind of decent, and can hit in a small AoE, mostly in a narrow straight line, so don't expect to hit more than one or maybe two enemies at a time. The hold skill, however, is a bit more interesting. You pull out your finger guns and start blasting. You go into a free aim mode and start firing wherever you're pointing, dealing about 3 instances of hydro damage every 3 seconds for about 8 seconds or so. You can release it earlier if you want, but in either situation you will fire off that same instance of hydro damage that the tap skill will do. You may also notice that your health is dropping along with these little blue orbs appearing around you. There will be more to this health draining effect, but the orbs are there for you to ponder. Touching these orbs, which I will now refer to as pondering them, will heal you for a percentage of your Traveler's maximum health. Let me be clear though, it can only heal your Traveler, so he's not a healer. This is actually the first sign of what he really is, a greedy on-field DPS of sorts. Now, once you're done pondering your orbs, you get a chance to use your burst. And with how many parts and how complicated the nature of his skill, we can assume that this is barely 2 lines of text. Simply put, you fire off a much larger orb for your enemies to ponder in a straight line in front of you, dealing constant hydro damage in a small area around the orb. This orb's baseline movement speed is fairly fast, and you can get maybe 2 or 3 ticks of damage out of it as it passes by enemies if you're lucky. I won't sugarcoat this. This burst is god-awful. It doesn't fit well with the mechanics of Genshin Impact on its own, and it's just kinda weak. However, it does have a saving grace of sorts that we'll talk about pretty soon, but before that, let's talk passives. Passive number 1 spawns the orbs that you are meant to ponder in the first place. They recover 7% of your maximum health. Interesting note, these small orbs are affected by animo, which means a character, say like Kazuha, can group them together for you so your Traveler can pick them up all at once without chasing them around. Not much use, but it's an interesting piece of tech nonetheless. The next passive says that when you're shooting off your hold skill, a percentage of the HP that you drain while doing so is added to the damage of the final hit of the skill, up to a maximum of 5,000 damage. This is so close to being really interesting. That 5k damage cap is so limiting and makes the skill feel kinda lousy. I mean, it might as well just say deal an extra 5,000 damage with your skill. It'd be just about as interesting. Well, that minor rant aside, let's talk Constellations. Constellation 1, gain energy every time you ponder an orb. If the burst was a little bit better, this might be more useful, but otherwise, it's just kinda generic and on its own, not very good. Constellation 2, the big orb moves slower and lasts longer. This right here is the saving grace for the Traveler's Burst. With this, you can actually average about 7 to 8 hits per burst on a single target instead of the 2 to 3 from before. It's seriously night and day here. This constellation is probably the most important one here, as it makes his burst go from absolutely horrible and unusable to somewhat functional. With some setup, your burst can actually do some okay damage now. Constellation 3, your water gun levels up, and since the skill is the bread and butter of this character, this is nice. Constellation 4, the Traveler generates a shield based on his maximum health for himself. and only himself. This will make getting off all your shots a little bit easier. Not super exciting, but once it's available, this will probably be okay. Constellation 5, the big orb levels up, and since the burst is only really functional with Constellations, some extra damage is nice, but not very interesting. Constellation 6, pondering an orb heals nearby party members for 6% of their max HP. This is easily the most mid C6 to ever exist in my opinion. So, with his kit laid out, we are left with an extremely greedy on-field sort of DPS that can kinda heal at C6. I think I get why people haven't been liking this mess of a character so far, but you know that won't stop me from trying to make this work. So let's at least make the best damn build we can. Let's get to it. Firstly, weapon. I'll be using the Jade Cutter as it is a very convenient crit weapon, and it also gives HP, as an added bonus, which the Hydro Traveler does actually like to have a little bit of. Alternative weapons would be most of the 5-star lineup, either limited or standard banner, all of them are good. And for 4 stars, maybe Sacrificial Sword? No, I'm serious. I'm not sure what to put on this guy other than one of the Battle Pass swords, or maybe the new crafted sword. The Hydro Traveler is a bit awkward, in my opinion, and finding a good fit for a weapon, well, a lot of them just feel kinda off. Yeah, honestly, just follow your heart on this one. I think most swords would be fine, realistically. For artifacts, I've been using a 2-piece Hydro damage set, as well as a 2-piece of the new skill damage base set, to really push his water gun to the absolute limit. The goal here being to turn his little water gun into a heavy-duty machine gun. Another set that I considered for this was actually Varakusha's Glow, the newer HP set that came out at the tail end of Sumeru. Given that he drains his own HP, he might actually be a good candidate for this set. Even though max HP isn't his favorite stat, it does work. Altogether though, these are the stats, this is what I'm working with. Next up, we need some teams to really make him shine. I came up with 3 different teams which I think all work to some degree. Mostly. Team number 1, Hydro Infusion DPS. Using Candace, we can actually infuse the Traveler's normal attacks to be Hydro. Don't do this. This is a meme even by my standards. It's really bad. Believe me, I tried. I even got my Traveler's attack up to level 6, and it dealt less damage than my unbuffed water gun. It was honestly kinda depressing. But a more interesting team, and a more powerful one, would be team number 2, Hyperbloom. Well, it's Hyperbloom, what do you expect? But hear me out. Traveler can actually operate as a fairly good on-field driver for a Hyperbloom team, using his water gun as the enabler. With Cookie Shinobu, and an off-field Dendro unit like Nahida, and any other filler character of your choosing, Traveler can stand boldly in the face of danger and moisturize your enemies, while Cookie's Lightning Aura triggers all the blooms and does the real damage for you. Honestly, I was kinda surprised how well this worked. You see, Traveler is actually very hard to break out of his shooting animation. He has a lot of resistance to interruption, meaning he can tank a lot of nonsense while just shooting away without much care in the world. He's definitely not the ideal candidate for your Hydro spot in this sort of team, but he's not terrible at it. Possibly a viable option when you're lacking anything else. And finally, my favorite, team number 3, Machine Gun Traveler. This was my favorite team of the bunch since it lets the Traveler be the hitman he was born to be, and as an added bonus, it uses Dia, which is one of my favorite characters. Basically, you just buff the Traveler as much as possible, and then unleash the full brunt of his water gun, before letting the last big hit of damage go through. As some extra bonus tech, you can end your rotation with his burst, and then follow it with Dia's burst for some extra vape damage. A meme team through and through, but I actually had a lot of fun with this one, so maybe give this one a shot. Damage was also better than I expected, weirdly enough. So now we have some teams, and a Traveler that is armed to the teeth. So I think it's about time we take him for a spin. My goal was to clear the Spiral Abysses floor 12 with the Hydro Traveler being a big part of the process, and I think he did pretty good, all things considered. The goal wasn't 9 stars, because that wasn't realistic, I didn't think. but I did get pretty close, ending the DPS run at 6 stars, and the Hyper Bloom run also at 6 stars. Here's the highlights from those runs, and I'll see you on the other side. So those were the runs, and from my testing and in my personal opinion, the Hydro Traveler is bad. He may be one of the worst characters in the game to date right now, but he is a bit better than what some people's opinions of him might lead you to believe. He's certainly not quite the 2-star character that I was told he was going to be. Truth be told, I had a lot of fun building him, and playing these kinds of really terrible, weak characters are kind of fun actually, you know? It gives me a chance to sort of show off my team building chops and see what we can make out of him. Anyway, if you like what I'm doing and you like the video, please subscribe, leave a like on the video. I really appreciate it. And if you have any opinions on the Hydro Traveler or other really off-meta characters that you want to see teams for, leave them in the comments down below. I always check every single one. Anyway, that's all from me. Cheers.